Pardons are now policy. Whole new ballgame. Joining us now, Mark Halperin, two-way host, author of Game Change. And I will borrow the name from your book that came out so many years ago and convinced me or inspired me to get involved in political reporting. Has Donald Trump 2.0 changed the game, Mark?
He has, and there's a lot of reasons for it. You mentioned one, which is the pardons at the signing of the executive orders. I don't think anyone's ever signed it in front of 20,000 cheering fans in an arena and chucked the pens into the crowd like T-shirts wadded up out of a cannon. Signing these pardons, these executive orders and pardons that are not expected, along with the ones that were. Democratic strategist Steve Elmendorf was on two-way last night. He said it's the 3 A's. It's the authenticity that Trump has always benefited from. It's the attention. He has dominated this week in a way that none of us who've covered Washington and politics can remember. And it's action. He's done more. You know, Trump's prone to hyperbole, but when he says he's done more in 3.5 days than some people do in 4 years, there's maybe, if these things hold, there may be some truth to that, because he's making Reagan look like a member of the deep state. He is changing things in a fundamental way, and he's benefited from 4 years off to think about it.
Well, 4 years off to think about it, and also 4 years off for Stephen Miller and others to plan and to draw up sort of, you know, they were, you know, if they were a mile wide and an inch deep, now they're a mile wide, and then they have the policies behind it. Help me understand, though, the pardons as policy, as an extension of politics, is different, is it not?
Well, I'll say, as I always like to remind people, I'm not here to cheer for Donald Trump or to promote him. I'm telling you, as an experienced analyst and watcher of administrations, the symbolism here is powerful. Some of the things they're doing is changing federal policy, but things like the pardons are symbolic. And Trump is not afraid of being criticized by the Washington Post editorial board or by a prominent columnist. And you saw in most of our presidents, not all, but in most, a concern about what the establishment thinks of them. Trump craves their support, but he's operating now with, as you said, a very long gestating plan. And all of these things they're doing are not by accident. They all have a lot of symbolism to them. Some are dog whistles, but some are shouts to the entire nation. And most of what he's doing, despite what some people in the establishment think, most, not all, but most of what he's doing is quite popular.
Yeah, I think about, you know, older people who were sent to jail for long prison sentences for peacefully protesting outside an abortion clinic. Whether you agree with them or not, there's sort of a fundamental fairness that he seems to be able to harness and fight for right now. Politico came back. The political fallout of the pardons is worth keeping a close eye on. Trump is at the start of his second term, but his last one. The Republicans have a razor-thin majority in the House. 2026 midterms will be here before we know it. Real risks exist for the GOP both now and in the future. These were the same people who told us Donald Trump was done in 2020 and into 2021 or in 2021. I'm not so sure that they understand what the new game looks like.
Yeah, I didn't think much of that piece, to be honest. Look, first of all, from a non-cynical point of view, I don't think it's right to be evaluating what an administration does by saying, well, they risk losing the next election if they do it. I think the right posture for Americans and America is do the right thing. And if it costs you in the election, so what? Use the power you have, use the mandate you have. But as I said before, Trump is playing pure power politics as well right now, 3 days in, but it's true during the transition, as well as any president I've covered. And he's benefiting from not just his side doing well and having a plan to execute, but the Democrats are in a weaker position than I thought. That won't last forever. Trump will have bad days and bad weeks, and the Democrats will begin to come back. But for now, he's taking advantage of an open field run here because the Democrats are not really pushing back very much and still trying to figure out how to talk about what Trump is doing in a way that voters will find compelling and appealing.
Yeah, I think the press also. The typical Washington establishment press is trying to figure that out as well. Mark, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.